The First Book of Moses, Bereshayath, Chapter 1, First Creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Shishak rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'un, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayath, or the Paleo-Hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo-Hebrew scriptures.
Joining us today from the great country of South Africa is my friend Edgar. And Edgar has been on with us. I don't know how many times you've been on, Edgar, a few times now. He's written quite a few very thoughtful, thought-provoking articles, which you can read on The Unexpected Cosmology. Of course, they're all free. You can go on there. And just last spring, I think it was, we brought him on to talk about the dino deception. And he brought up some very thought-provoking arguments in there on the idea that dinosaur fossils are all a hoax. And we're here to talk about a very different subject matter today. So welcome, Edgar. How are you doing?
Thanks, Noel. I'm so blessed and just thankful to be here with the Unexpected Cosmology community. It's such a special community. I really love coming on. I think it's one of the rare cases where people with different viewpoints can really share in a peaceful and loving manner. So I really enjoy coming on.
Sorry, I was muting my my server there because I heard it dinging while we were live. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the resurrection and the dew of heaven. Hopefully, I didn't give anything away. That's what we're here for today. And just take it away, Edgar. Take me through it. If I have any questions, I guess I'll just jump in at any time.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Noel. So yes, I think one of the topics we don't talk about a lot in the Christian community is the resurrection and the day of resurrection. And I think it's been something that we actually have suppressed for quite a long time. And I think a lot of churches, this church I grew up in, never talked about the resurrection like ever. So I know we talk about the resurrection when Jesus got resurrected, but recently, I started discipling my two daughters. One of them is 8 and the other one is 10. And they got baptized. One got baptized last year and the one a year before that. And when we were just doing our weekly discipleship with them, we actually read Hebrews 6. And in Hebrews 6, it says the following. It says, therefore, this is the first two verses of Hebrews 6. It says, therefore, leaving the elementary teaching about the Christ, the Messiah, let us press on to maturity, not again laying a foundation of repentance from dead works and of faith toward God, of instruction about washing and laying on of hands. And we do see plenty of that in the Old Testament. And then it says, and the resurrection of the dead and eternal judgment. So for me, when I read this is stuff I should be teaching in my discipleship to my children. But when I was thinking about the resurrection, I was like, whoa, but where do we see these promises in the Old Testament? Where can we pull these promises up? Yes, we read a lot of it in the New Testament, and we even see a group of Sadducees that do not believe in a resurrection, and they only actually believe in the first 5 books, the books of Moses, which is actually so sad. I think especially coming from the Torah community, a lot of people get stuck in those first 5 books, and it's great. I don't want to diminish the Torah. I mean, it's our foundation, it's essential. But what happens is you actually miss out on so much. Doing the Torah portions every year, yes, it's great. And usually people use the text, the proof text, as a proof for reading the Torah portions, where Yeshua or Yahusha actually pulls the scroll of Isaiah, where he's actually reading not from the Torah, he's actually reading from the prophets. So I think there are so many promises in Psalms and in the prophets that we actually need to incorporate in our studies as well. And one of those promises is the resurrection. The only text that's more or less in the time frame of Moses is actually the book of Enoch that actually references text to the resurrection. But you have to move further than that to get the promises of the resurrection. There's a promise in Isaiah 26. There's the promise in Ezekiel 37. There's a promise in Daniel 12, where we can see there's a promise for the righteous that they will be resurrected to everlasting life. And that is actually what salvation is. Salvation is actually, the fulfillment of salvation actually happens not to be part of the second death. So you are actually saved from the second death. That is where the salvation happens. And then when you are saved, you go up to the feast on the mountain of Zion to share that feast with the other immortals that have been saved from the judgment of God. So I think it's just a critical point for us to really teach that to our children and those who believe, to say, yes, but this is such an essential part of our faith, to know what does the resurrection mean, and what is the importance thereof. And then I actually went further to say, okay, but what does that look like for us to be part of the resurrection? So here is just this is not on TUC, so I just want to use this as a foundation, where we see in the New Testament, yes, we see the Sadducees, but they do not believe in the resurrection. But it was a common theme, a common thing that they knew would happen, that people would rise again. And we see even Martha in this passage, where she actually tells Yeshua where Lazarus died, that she knows he will be part of the resurrection. So she knows about the resurrection. Or is it this passage over here, John 11? But Luke 14 as well is such a powerful passage, where it says, but when you give a reception, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, since they do not have the means to repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. When one of those who were reclining at the table with him heard this, he said to him, blessed is everyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of Elohim. And then John 11 says, Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. This is talking about Lazarus. And Martha said to him, and this is so redemptive and special for Martha, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Yeshua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. So the teaching of the resurrection was a common thing. And everybody knew about the resurrection, not just the righteous, but everybody will be resurrected. And then there will be a line in the sand and say, okay, the righteous are going to this side and the wicked are going to this side. And it seems like even in Sheol, there is a divide. And that's what we see in Luke 16. There's a righteous side in Sheol and there's an unrighteous side. And I think it's Enoch 17 that also actually describes that specific place in Sheol. And then as I was studying through the Old Testament and trying to figure out, okay, but where are these promises of the resurrection? I actually realized a lot of them were hidden or worked out of the texts. If you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, this is the, I'm not going to go to this. I'm going to go to this segment over here, is the Messianic Apocalypse. It's also known as the Resurrection Scroll. And in it, it has Isaiah 61. But it has a slight difference. So it says, for he will heal the wounded. And then it says, and he will revive the dead. and bring good news to the poor. So that part of revive the dead is actually missing from Isaiah 61. And the same with Job. Like when you read Job, let me just scroll to Job. Job 42, it actually says in the Septuagint, so this is not in your normal Masoretic text translation, but it actually says that he will be part of the resurrection. It says, and Job died, an old man full of days, and it is written, he will rise again with those whom Yahuwah raises up. So it seems to me there has been quite a purposeful agenda to actually remove some of these texts from the Old Testament especially. But then the one that you can't get away from is Isaiah 25 and Isaiah 26. And this is the festival of the righteous, or those who have been redeemed. It says, on the mountain of Yahuwah of hosts will prepare a lavish banquet for all the peoples, a feast of aged wine and choice meat. So I think that's going to be difficult for the vegans. Of finely aged wine. On the mountain, he will swallow up the shroud that enfolds all people, the sheet that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. So here we see this is something for the immortal people. And the Lord God will wipe away the tears, every face, and remove the disgrace of his people from the whole earth. For Yahuwah has spoken. And in that day will be said, surely this is our Elohim. We have waited for him, and he has saved us. This is Yahuwah, for whom we have waited. Let us rejoice and be glad in his salvation. So at that moment is actually when salvation happens. And then furthermore, I actually realized there was quite a big link between lightning and the sons of God and the resurrected saints. Here is, I think it's Zechariah 9, where it says, and Yahuwah shall be over them, and his arrow shall go forth as lightning. And that's so interesting because in Psalms it says that blessed, if you have children, it says, blessed is the man whose quiver is full, for his children are like arrows. And we are the children of the Most High. And so many times the arrows of Yahuwah is equated to lightning. And I think it's in the Wisdom of Sirach, it actually says that the resurrected ones will be like sparks among the stubble. So we see a connection there, and that maybe gives us a little bit of an insight into how these resurrected bodies will be. They will be functioning more or less like lightning. I'm not going to read that whole passage. This is still very rough. So this is not on TUC, but hopefully I can panel beat this a little bit and have it ready.
Do you quote from Wisdom of Solomon in here?
Not in this passage, actually. No.
I was going to bring that up because while you're on that about functioning like lightning, that's actually how it describes the resurrected during the millennial kingdom, is that they would be sparks of light going to and fro. So
yes, exactly. And there are many references like that. It actually speaks of them being like sparks, which I think is amazing, because we see the link in Psalms that says, okay, yes, you are blessed if you have many children. They are like arrows in your quiver. And the lightning is equated to Yahuwah's arrows. So we see that link of the children are like lightning, actually. But that would be the children at the resurrection. So Isaiah 26, this is such an amazing passage. So this is one that couldn't write out of even the Masoretic text has this in. It says, and as a woman in travail draws nigh to be delivered and cries out in her pain, so have we been to thy beloved. We have conceived, and that again talks about the earth being a womb. I think Noel has spoken about that quite a lot, where the earth will give birth to the sons of Elohim, like Romans 8 says, the whole creation yearns for the sons to be born. We have conceived, O Yahuwah, because of thy fear, and we have been in pain and have brought forth the breath of thy salvation, which we have wrought upon the earth. We shall not fall, but all that dwell upon the land shall fall. Then it says, the dead shall rise, and they that are in the tomb shall be raised, and they that are in the earth shall rejoice. And here it is, for the dew from thee is healing to them. So we're going to get very deep into the dew. This is really just a foundation for what is happening at a resurrection. But the land of the ungodly shall perish. Go, my people, enter into thy closets, shut thy door, hide thyself for a little season, until the anger of Yahuwah has passed away. And then Ezekiel 37 is the passage about the dry bones coming to life. So that's a big one. But a lot of people have been understanding that as a metaphorical meaning for the Jewish people. that have come back to life. But I think this is actually talking about the physical resurrection of the true children of Israel. Then I'm not okay. Let me just maybe quote. This is Second Maccabees. This is such an amazing passage on. Oh, actually, I have that part in here, no, from Book of Wisdom, Wisdom of Sirach. It says, "As gold in the furnace, he proved them, and as a sacrificial offering, he took them to himself. In the time of the judgment, they shall shine and dart about as sparks through stubble." So this is about the resurrection. I'm just going to go back to Second Maccabees. This is such an amazing passage about the resurrection and their hope in the resurrection. And I think that to me is actually astounding that we have not taught this more frequently, because what hope have you got if there is no resurrection after death? And this passage in Maccabees makes it so clear that this was something they really clung to in that time frame. It says, after the first brother had died. Okay, so the context is Antiochus Epiphanes is killing the Jewish people. He's forcing them to eat swine's flesh and forcing them to forsake the law. And now he's got a family that he wants to make an example of. So he's taking the mother, and I think it's 6 or 7 brothers, and he's killing them off like one by one. And it says, after the first brother had died in this way, they brought forward a second for their sport. They tore off his skin off his head with his hair and asked him, "Will you eat rather than have your body punished limb by limb?" He replied in the language of his fathers and said to them, "No." Therefore, in turn underwent tortures as the first brother had done. And when he was at the last breath, he said, "You accursed wretch, you dismiss us from this present life, but the King of the universe will raise us to an everlasting renewal of life, because we have died for his laws." Such a powerful passage. And then they actually just move to the next brother, and all of them have similar things to say. This brother says, "One cannot but choose to die at the hands of men and to cherish the hope that God gives of being raised up again by him. But for you, there will be no resurrection to life." So he will obviously be part, the guy that's killing them will not be part of the resurrection of the righteous, but of the unrighteous. And then this, I think this might be the mother. The mother actually then says, "It was not I who gave you life and breath." So she admitted it's not she that can give them life. It's the Most High. "Nor I who set in order the elements within each of you. Therefore, the creator of the world, who shaped the beginning of man and devised the origins of all things, will in his mercy give life and breath back to you again, since you now forget yourselves for the sake of his laws." So because they are walking in righteousness as far as they possibly can, even to the point of death, they know they will be part of the resurrection of the righteous. I just thought I'm just going to share one more passage from the book of the Bee. Then I can head into the dew of heaven passage. I also have some sublime oracles here, but I'm not going to do that. Let me just share this part of the book of the Bee that talks about the resurrection. In the book of the Bee, it says, "The third trumpet is the last, at which the dead will rise and the living be changed." And the blessed Paul, blessed Paul says, "Swiftly as in the twinkling of an eye at the last trumpet when it sounds, and the dead shall rise without corruption and shall be changed." And then it says, "So swiftly and speedily will the resurrection of all men be wrought, according to the spiritual nature of the new world." For the swiftness of the resurrection will surpass the swiftness of understanding, and the spiritual host alone see and know in what manner it will take place, every man being suddenly found standing in his spirituality. Some men therefore have a tradition that the resurrection of righteous and the just and the believers will precede that of other men who are remote from the true faith. But according to the opinion of the truthful and of the people generally, the resurrection of the whole human race will take place quicker than lightning, and then in the twinkling of an eye, from the generation of Adam to the latest generation that shall rise at the last trumpet. So if I understand this correctly, I could be wrong, but what I'm seeing is that everybody will actually experience the resurrection and in the same moment. It's almost like that time will intersect. Even though we are in different places in the timeline, your specific place will then intersect with that Isaiah 25 feast and that moment of resurrection. And everybody from Adam to the last generation will experience that together. almost like when Yeshua went to the mountain of transfiguration, and he had that moment with Moses and Elijah, which I think you also explained this in a video. No, that is actually moments from the past, but when Moses went to Mount Sinai and Elijah went up to the mountain, they actually experienced that specific moment in time on their individual timelines. So I think this is going to be a similar case with the resurrection, where everybody will experience that, even though we are in different time periods or sections of time, we will then be accumulated into that specific event and experience it together as a resurrected people. So that's how I understand it. So
that's an incredible thought. So I mean, the idea is that wherever we're at on the timeline, so you and I are on the same, obviously the same epoch, the same segment of the timeline. We experience the resurrection, and then everyone before us, like David, Abraham, Adam, Noah, they're all entering the kingdom at the same time we come in. Is that your
yes? So that's what I'm getting from this passage in the book of the Bee. Like, even though like in the Gospel of Nicodemus, we see that there took place a resurrection. Or if we read through the Odes of Solomon, we read through the accounts of these resurrected saints, and we see that they have experienced something of the resurrection. But then we also need to be resurrected. That's the promise for those who believe. So how does that work? And it can't be like a linear timeline. And to me, this book of the Bee explanation, like, everybody will experience it at the same point in time, even though they died in different periods or different stages. But it will be like a specific point in time. All of these ages get together and they get to be part of the resurrection. Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing this one, and then I'm going to move over to another one. Let me just share this.
And while he pulls that up, in case you guys missed it, what he was referencing there is the proposed idea that I put forward, that we are literally seeing time travel in the Bible, where when Messiah is transfigured and he's speaking to Moses and Elijah, if Moses and Elijah were dead at that time, that would be a transgression of the Torah. It would be a problem if he's bringing up the dead. And then others have proposed that it was simply like Project Bluebeam, like he's just putting up the, he's putting up, it's like whoop-de-doo, you just put an illusion up there. It's like, clearly that's not what's happening. Clearly he's speaking to living entities, and the resurrection hadn't happened yet. And it's been my proposal that that these two characters, it's actually documented when these two individuals go to Mount Sinai and speak to Yahweh, and that they're actually communing with Yahushua HaMashiach on the mountain. So in case you guys missed that. So, okay, I need to pull the next one up. We're looking at a blank screen here. So perfect. Good. Is that it?
Yes, perfect. Yes, that's the right one. So it was so interesting for me because I tried to describe what the resurrection would be like in language that we can understand. And the best language I could come up with is that it felt to me like every time I'm reading about the resurrection, it feels like a spring or summer morning where you can hear the birds chirping, and you can hear maybe the flow of water or a river, and you can see the dew on the grass, and you can just feel the crispiness of the air. And I think that is something we will experience in the resurrection. I'm going to start with this passage from the Gospel of Nicodemus. Have you ever wondered what the resurrection of the righteous would be like? I'm coming to the conclusion that the resurrection of the righteous will be, or was, depending on your eschatological outlook, like a beautiful summer morning. The Gospel of Nicodemus. But while this was Joseph, was standing at prayer in the middle of the night, the house was surrounded by 4 angels, and I saw Yeshua as the brightness of the sun, and fell down upon the earth for fear. So now Yeshua is coming to Joseph. He's been resurrected. So this is his uncle Joseph. His father, his earthly father, passed away long before that. But Yeshua, laying hold of my hand, lifted me from the ground, and the dew was then sprinkled upon me. But he, wiping my face, kissed me and said unto me, Fear not, Joseph, look upon me, for it is I. Then I looked upon him and said, Rabboni Elias. He answered me, I am not Elias, but Jesus of Nazareth, whose body thou did bury. So there we see the dew on the grass or on Yeshua, and that lets me reminds me of in the Song of Songs that actually describes the beloved also with dew on his head in that specific book. And then, did you notice that some dew was sprinkled on Joseph with this documented post-resurrection account of the Messiah? Now, it could be the normal dew of the morning, but I will be making a much more significant connection today, hopefully. So yeah, at that moment, the sons of Elohim are revealed. So I'm talking about that resurrection day. The world feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for the glorious burst of light that will flood the sky. Suddenly you feel a gentle, warm glow on your face, and the cool, refreshing dew of heaven touches your skin. And it's cleansing you, renewing you, reminding you of the promise of new life. The horizon is about to reveal the first light of sunrise, and you arise from the ground as the rays of Messiah touch you through the dust of the earth. You revive, you open your eyes, you realize it's resurrection day. This is no ordinary morning. It's a divine embrace, a touch of grace, a whisper of hope that everything is made new. The resurrection isn't just an event from history. It's a daily invitation to be renewed, refreshed, and resurrected in our hearts. And I actually came up with this idea before I got to this quote from a Rabbi Zechariah. I couldn't find the time frame he lived, but it seems like 3rd, 4th century when he was alive. More or less. And he said, the sleep at night is like this world, and the awakening of the morning is like the world to come. And just in the sleep of the night, a man lies down and sleeps, and his spirit wanders over all the earth and tells him in a dream whatever happens. And it is said, in a dream, in a vision of the night, I think he's quoting from Job, then he opens the ears of men, likewise with the dead. The spirit wanders over all the earth and tells them all things that happen in the world, but they are silent, and yet they give song and praise to God, who will quicken them in the future. As it is said, let the saints exalt in glory. The awakening in the morning is like the future world. So every morning you wake up, you actually experience like a mini sample of what the resurrection would be like. A parable unto what is matter to be likened, to a man who awakens out of his sleep. This actually reminds me also of the Matrix, that moment that Neo like wakes up in that cocoon thing or water cocoon thing, and he wakes up out of that. He just awakens to new life. In like manner will the dead awaken in the future world. As it is said, satisfy us in the morning with thy loving kindness. There are so many cool scriptures about the morning and what God does in the morning. I didn't cover all of those, but a lot of them have to do with the resurrection. This is a familiar one, Malachi 4. But for you, fear my name, the Son of Righteousness. This is now S-U-N, Son of Righteousness, just like the sun coming up in the morning, will rise with healing in its wings. So this is very similar to Isaiah 61, that it says the Messiah will come to heal you. But remember what we just saw in Isaiah 61 in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It also says that he will come to revive you and bring you up from death. And you will go out and leap like calves from the stall. Then you will trample the wicked. For they will be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day I'm preparing, says Yahuwah of hosts. Then Psalm 30 verse 5 says, sing to Yahuwah his saints and give thanks for the remembrance of his holiness. For anger is in his wrath, but life in his favor. Weeping shall tarry for evening, but joy shall be in the morning. Okay, here's another rabbi. I'm quoting this from Perkidi Eliezer on the resurrection. This is Rabbi Tanchum. And he said, on account of the seed of the earth, when it is commanded, it discharges the dew for the resurrection of the dead. For what place does it descend? From the head of the Holy One, blessed be he. So here we have the head of the Holy One. Earlier we saw the dew on the head of the beloved, or on the head of Yahushua Mashiach. For head of the Holy One, blessed be he, is full of the reviving dew. In the future life, the Holy One, blessed be he, will shake his head and cause the quickening dew to descend. And it is said, I was asleep, but my heart wakened, for my head is filled with dew. I think this is a quote from Song of Songs. My locks with the drops of the night. So they understood something about this. So I'm just going to read a quick explanation on what is the dew. Dew is water droplets that form on objects like grass and leaves when water vapor in the air condenses on a cool surface. Dew forms when the air cools or when the surface cools. Dew forms when the dew point is reached. The dew point is the temperature at which water vapor condenses. The dew point varies by location, weather, time of day, and dew can also be drawn from the ground. So there are many scriptures that actually talk about people like grass withering away. So this is one of them, Isaiah 40. And it says, a voice says, cry out. And I ask, why should I cry out? All flesh is like grass, and all its glory like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fall. When the breath of Yahuwah blows on them, indeed the people are grass. The grass withers and the flowers fall. But the word of Yahuwah stands forever. So now we see that we in our mortal state are compared to grass, and the shortness, the briefness of our lives are like this grass of the field or flowers of the field. But then Proverbs says, the king's wrath is as the roaring of a lion, but his favor is as dew upon the grass. Yes, of course, this can mean that when we receive favor from a king, it is like dew, it is a blessing, and there's growth of abundance, and so on and so forth. However, on an esoteric level, when we receive favor from the king, we will receive the promise of the resurrection. Not convinced yet. In Hebrew, the word is tal. According to the Strong's definition, it can mean dew or night mist, while in the ancient Hebrew lexicon, it relates more to covering nature of the dew. So it's talking more about that attribute of the dew that focuses on covering the grass, like in the example of the manna. There is no surprise that the descent of dew is linked with the coming of manna. When the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell with it. It is like the word that endures forever upon the mortal grass. So here we see the grass and the dew or the manna falling upon the grass. In John 6, we are given the explanation of bread from heaven. The manna that was given to Israel in the wilderness was a foreshadowing of the coming Son of Elohim. Yahushua was the true bread of heaven, or dew of heaven, in this case, the living bread. We also know that he is the resurrection and the life, and no one can come to the Father except through him. Okay, the origins of dew. Astonishingly enough, dew, along with all the other forms of water, were always there if you read Genesis 1. The creation account tells you it was present even though the earth was void and desolate. In the book of Job, we read the following in regard to the origins of water. He has divided a watercourse for the overflowing waters, or a way for the lightning of thunder, to cause it to rain on the earth where no man is, or the wilderness wherein there is no man, to satisfy the desolate and waste ground, and to cause the bud of the tender herb to spring forth. Has the rain a father, or has begotten the drops of dew, out of whose womb came the ice and the hoarfrost of heaven? Who has gendered it? The waters are hid as with a stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. That's Job 38, 25 to 30. And I think this is actually trying to say that there is no point of origin for the water, because when you read Genesis 1, it says that the water was already there from the start. Such a profound statement. Have you ever noticed in creation account, we are seeing that water is just present. It was not created or has a point of origin that we can pinpoint in the scriptures. Yahuwah never lets water gush from his mouth or created or anything of that nature. The creation starts with the covering of water, just like the dew is a covering of water. It helps us to germinate the dormant seed in due time. Okay, this passage is coming from 3 Baruch, which is such a wonderful book. And the angel said, listen to Baruch. The plain which contains in it the pool and other wonders is the place where the souls of the righteous come when they hold converse. So there's like this place, almost like a pool where the righteous people meet. I'm not sure. I think this is in the third heaven. Living together in choirs. So I hope you like singing. But the water is that which the clouds receive, and the rain upon the earth, and the fruits increase. And I said again to the angel of Yahuwah, but what are these birds? And he said to me, these are those which continually sing praise to Yahuwah. And I said, Yahuwah, and how do men say that water which descends in rain is from the sea? And the angel said, The water which descends in rain, this also is from the sea and from the waters upon the earth. But that which stimulates the fruit is only from the latter source. Known therefore henceforth that from this source is what is called the dew of heaven. So this is so cool because it says the water that brings forth fruit is called the dew of heaven. I hope you have a singing voice, because if you want to meet up in the fourth heaven, we are meeting up in choirs. I thought that was interesting, but back to the dew from heaven. The dew from heaven comes from a special place, the fourth heaven. According to Baruch's account, it is the water source that brings forth fruit.
Have you ever heard a hound dog sing? Because that, you know, I love hound. I don't want to go off topic. I'm sorry, but you know, I love hound dogs to death. And the one breed of dog that comes out of the Middle Ages is the hound dog, and
Ooh, nice.
I will gladly join in their choir. So
maybe we will have different voices. I don't know. No, we don't know. The dew of heaven and the resurrection. Okay, so now we're actually getting to the point of this presentation. Typically, many theologians have gone with the explanation that the dew from heaven means blessing or favor from Yahuwah, and yes, you can see that clearly in the Bible. For instance, when Isaac blesses his younger son Jacob, the first thing mentioned is God gives you the dew of heaven. Following his younger brother's blessing, Esau arrives from the hunt. Part of Esau's blessing, or rather prophetic future, according to his father Isaac, is that he will be away from the dew of heaven. So here, if you just compare the two blessings, here's Jacob's blessing on the left and Esau's blessing on the right. So Jacob's blessing says, so he came near and kissed him. This is now Isaac kissing Jacob. When Isaac smelled his clothing, he blessed him and said, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that Yahuwah has blessed. May Elohim give to you the dew of heaven and the riches of the earth, and abundance of grain and new wine. And may people serve you and nations bow down to you. May you be the master of your brothers, and may your sons and your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. And then Esau's, I don't know if you must call it a blessing, but the word he got from his father Isaac answered him, behold, your dwelling place shall be away from the richness of the land, away from the dew of heaven. You shall live by the sword and serve your brother, but when you rebel, you will tear his yoke from your neck. So this passage comes from Genesis 27. I do not think that there's anything wrong with that explanation. I just think there's more to it than just simply meaning favor or blessing or abundance. We need to be born of spirit and water to come into the spiritual family, John 3. John 3 is also about the resurrection, when we are again restored to our former state in heavenly places. So this is John 3. And Yeshua answered and said, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of Elohim. So I think this born again, I know we've been taught that is when you, actually when you repent, this is when you are born again. But I think this is literally when you are born again from the ground. You get to see the kingdom of Elohim. Nicodemus said to him, how can a man be born when he is old? He cannot enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born, can he? Yeshua answered, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water, there's the water, and the spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of Elohim. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the spirit is spirit. Do not be amazed that I said to you, you must be born again. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound of it, but do not know where it comes from and where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the spirit. The water birth that Yahushua is referring to, in my opinion, doesn't mean your mother's amniotic fluid. I know we've been taught this. Amniotic fluid is a water-like substance that surrounds and protects the fetus during pregnancy. I can see how many people think that it could be that water. But my question here was like, what about children that are not born through that water and they get aborted, or what happens to them? Although the case is far from compelling, and I'm not convinced. I'm thinking that the water could rather be, the water could rather be talking about the dew of heaven. And the whole passage is referring to the resurrection, and it would be contextually adding up. Now, if you are wondering if the dew of heaven has any other resurrection connections, you have come to the right place. You will need to allow me some time and scriptures to set it up for you, but I'm sure I can make a solid case that the water referred to in John 3 is in fact the dew of heaven. I just want to get a glass of water. Okay. So this is Isaiah 14. It says, I will be as the dew unto Israel. So this is Yahuwah that says, he will be like the dew. He shall grow as the lily and cast forth his roots as Lebanon. His branches shall spread, and his beauty shall be as the olive tree, and his smell as Lebanon. They that dwell under his shadow shall return. They shall revive as the corn and grow as the vine. The scent thereof shall be as the wine of Lebanon. Ephraim shall say, what have I to do any more with idols? I have heard him and observed him. I am like a green fir tree. From me is thy fruit found. Who is wise and shall understand these things, prudent and shall know them? For the way of Yahuwah are right, and just shall walk in them. For the transgressors shall fall therein. So here we again see the righteous that are getting the dew from heaven. Yah will be the dew to Israel, not to anybody else. Remember what Jacob's or Israel's blessing was? He will receive the dew from heaven. That was Jacob's blessing. It will be important as we move along. This is not merely a promise of providence and favor, but in fact a promise of eternal life. This is a promise specifically to the righteous if you keep on reading, just like any seed that bears fruit according to its kind. So if you are a right, like we read about those people in Maccabees, they were righteous till the end. So that righteous seed grows into the ground, and then a righteous harvest comes up. Once the righteous is sown in righteousness, they will yield a righteous reward through the covenant promises that include the resurrection. This is from Isaiah 26. We read it earlier on, but I think let's just read it again. Thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in the dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out its dead. That's from the Brenton Septuagint, Isaiah 26. What a precious promise of resurrection life. The dust of death is overcome by the dew of heaven. When sin entered into the world, death entered, for dust you are, and dust you shall return. However, this is where the promise for the righteous comes in. The dew of heaven is released and brings forth the dead from the earth. Like seeds that were sown in the ground, they will rise up once more on the day of the resurrection of the righteous. This is why we need to make sure in this life that we obtain the eternal seed of life. Okay, here, Rabbi Eliezer again on the resurrection of the dead. In the future life, the Holy One, blessed be He, will cause the reviving dew to descend, and He will quicken the dead and renew all things, as it is said, thy dead shall live. Thy are the Israelites who died trusting in His name. My dead body shall rise. They are the heathens who are like the carcass of the beast. They shall arise for the day of judgment, but they shall not live. So there you see again the two categories. There's a group that will be coming up from the dead, will be resurrected, but they will be judged. And then there's a group that will be resurrected, but they will be saved and get to join into the feast of Isaiah 25. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in the dust. They are the righteous, for they dwell in dust. For thy dew is the dew of light. The dew of the righteous is not the dew of darkness, but the dew of light. As it is said, for thy dew is as the dew of light, and it gives healing to the earth, as it is said, and the earth shall cast forth the dead. So here again, I think that book of Pirkei D. Eliezer was compiled in the 8th century, but most of these rabbis actually lived in the 2nd and 3rd, 4th centuries. So these were their thoughts at that point in time. Why Yahuwah's glorious light and life, He will, with Yahuwah's glorious light and life, He will animate and glorify the righteous dead. Pirkei D. Eliezer refers to the dew of heaven as the dew of light. Again, you get the impression of a crisp and fresh summer morning at sunrise. That is what the resurrection will be like. Now, Ginsburg continues to expand on the idea that the dew of heaven has been reserved for the righteous. So this is Louis Ginsburg in the Legends of the Dews, the first day. The seventh heaven, on the other hand, so I think he says that the dew of heaven is in the seventh heaven. I think Baruch said it's in the fourth heaven. On the other hand, contains naught but what is good and beautiful, right, justice and mercy, the storehouses of life, peace and blessing, the souls of the pious, the souls and the spirits of the unborn generations, the dew with which Yahuwah will revive the dead on the resurrection day, and above all, the divine throne, surrounded by seraphim, the Ophanim, the holy Hayot, and the ministering angels. So here he says, the dew with which Yahuwah will revive the dead on the resurrection day is in the seventh heaven. Here it seems to be originating from the seventh heaven. That would make sense. Earlier we read in the fourth heaven, there's a pool in the fourth heaven where the dew of heaven is gathered. We know it has to make its way down to the earth somehow. So the picture I got was like it maybe originates in the seventh, which is the highest heaven, and then it goes down somewhere into the fourth where there is a pool, where maybe some of it just gathers together. So the fourth heaven dew pool that Baruch is describing could still slot in nicely if you know your biblical cosmology. Like we mentioned in the origins of the dew section, it was already present in the creation account. Ginsburg elaborates and states it is reserved for the resurrection in the seventh heaven during the first day of creation. So he says the dew is in the seventh heaven and is for all those that will be resurrected. Now here is the gospel of Nicodemus. It says, the dead men shall live, and they shall rise again, who are in their graves, and they shall rejoice who are in the earth. For the dew, which is from Yahuwah, shall bring deliverance to them. And I said in another place, O death, where is thy victory? So here he's quoting Isaiah, O death, where is your sting? When all the saints heard these things spoken by Isaiah, they said to the prince of hell, open thy gates and take away thy iron bars, for thou wilt now be bound and have no power. Okay, the dew of heaven and the Odes of Solomon. Okay, so this is the juicy part. If you are new to the Odes of Solomon, they are a poetic treasure trove of 42 odes or hymns. Most agree they probably date back to somewhere between 70 and 125 AD. It is said to be penned by King Solomon himself, but that can't be true, though we can't be 100% sure. Others argue it was possibly penned down by former members of the Essene community, of which John the Baptist and Yahushua were most likely part of. And I highly doubt both cases. If you would read the context, the Odes of Solomon were probably penned by various authors, including Messiah and some resurrected saints. So what do these odes have to say on the dew of heaven? Okay, so here's Odes of Solomon 11. And the Lord renewed me in his raiment and possessed me with his light. And from above he gave me rest in incorruption, and I became like the land which blossoms and rejoices in its fruit. So here we see these flowers are blossoming, and Yahuwah was like the sun shining on the face of the land. So that's very similar to Malachi 4. And he lighted my eyes, and my face received the dew, and my nostrils enjoyed the pleasant odor of Yahuwah. And he carried me to his paradise, where is the abundance of the pleasure of Yahuwah. And I worshipped Yahuwah on account of his glory. And I said, blessed be, O Yahuwah, are they who are planted in thy land, and those who have a place in thy paradise. So this person is saying he went to paradise, and it's only the resurrected that can go to paradise. You cannot go to paradise in the flesh. We have been over this before, but once more we see how the resurrection will be like a land that is bursting with new life from the ground. The light and the dew are two elements that are always present in the resurrection accounts in these ancient texts. Here we see another element added, a raiment. So that's your wedding garment. That is probably the wedding garment that Yahushua speaks of, and the same garments of light that Adam and Eve used to wear. It is in this resurrected state that the author is chaperoned to the paradise with Messiah. But wait, there's more. Ode 35 says, the dew of Yahuwah is in quietness he distilled upon me, and the cloud of shalom he caused to rise over my head, which guarded me continually, and it was to me for salvation. So there we again see salvation is equated with when we are resurrected and we are saved from that second death, from that judgment. Everything was shaken and they were frightened. And there came forth from them a smoke and a judgment, and I was keeping quiet in order of Yahuwah, for then shelter was he to me, and more than foundation. And I was carried like a child by his mother, and he gave me milk and the dew of Yahuwah. And I grew great by his bounty and rested in his perfection. And I spread out my hands in lifting up my soul, and I was made right with the Most High, and I was redeemed with him. Hallelujah. So here we see something else coming in next to the dew is the milk. This has to be one of the most beautiful passages ever written. If this does not get you amped up for the resurrection and excited about eternity with Yahuwah, I'm not sure what will. Being made right and perfected by Messiah sounds wonderful. Here, the dew of heaven is also referred to as milk. Enoch expands on the idea of milk we will receive at the resurrection. So this is Enoch chapter 51. And in those days shall the earth also give back that which it has been entrusted to it. So this is talking about the dead. And Sheol also shall give back that which it has received, and hell shall give back that which it owes. For in those days the elect one shall arise, and he shall choose the righteous and holy from among them, from the dead. And for the day has drawn nigh that they should be saved. And the elect one shall in those days sit on my throne, and his mouth shall pour forth all the secrets of wisdom and counsel. For Yahuwah of spirits has given them to me and has glorified him. And in those days shall the mountains leap like rams. So this is very similar to Malachi 4 again. And the hills also shall skip like lambs, satisfied with milk. So there we see milk. These lambs will receive milk. All the faces of the angels in heaven shall be lighted up with joy, and the earth shall rejoice, and the righteous shall dwell upon it, and the elect shall walk thereon. If you remember Malachi 4, we quoted earlier, you would notice many similarities once more. Milk or dew or sometimes honey is often a substance that is consumed by the resurrected. Both honey, dew, and manna are often talked about in the same vein. All point to the word of Yahuwah being consumed. Now here's the honey connection. So we saw the milk connection with the dew. Now we're going to do the honey connection with the dew. I read Joseph and Asenath about a year ago and saved this passage over there here for some time, for some reason. Today, while I'm writing this article, I realized how profound it is. This passage really stood out to me when I read Joseph and Asenath, and I wasn't sure why, but I kept it. And when I was writing this, I was reminded of this passage. The divine angel said to her, this is Asenath, enter thy storehouse, and thou wilt find a bee's comb. So this is actually where I think just when Asenath has repented from her sins and her idols. And it says, enter thy storehouse, and thou wilt find a bee's comb lying upon the table. Take it up and bring it hither. And she said, Lord, there is no bee's comb in the storehouse. And he said, go, and thou wilt find it. And Asenath entered her storehouse and found a honeycomb lying upon the table. And the comb was great and white like snow and full of honey. And that honey was as dew from heaven. And the odor thereof was the odor of life. Then Asenath wondered and said in herself, is this comb from the mouth of this man himself? Yummy. The honeycomb sounds delicious. The honey is compared with the dew of heaven. We have already imagined arguing with an angel. I think I can't imagine arguing with an angel to tell the angel there's no honey. If the angel tells me there's honey, I would just be like, go, okay. Whatever you say, sir. Asenath did. She argued. It was like she was used to conversing with them, or very confident or ignorant. I'm not sure. Maybe a mixture. How would you have responded? The passage goes on. You are blessed, Asenath, for the indescribable things of Elohim have been revealed to you, and blessed too are those who give their allegiance to Yahuwah Elohim in penitence, for they shall eat of this comb. So here it says, those who give allegiance to Yahuwah Elohim, they will eat of this honeycomb. The bees of the paradise of delight have made this honey, and the angels of Elohim eat of it, and no one who eats of it shall ever die. And the man stretched his right hand out and broke off a piece of the comb and ate it, and he put a piece of it into Asenath's mouth. I wonder if this is the same as the bread of the angels mentioned in 2nd Ezra. I'm not sure. Very well could be, although that would lead to plenty more discussions and more digging. For now, all I wanted to connect the dots for was the resurrection day. Both honey consumption and dew covering are mentioned in the context of resurrection or eternal life, and both can be traced back to manna and the bread of heaven, and therefore Yahusha. Can we connect dew, honey, and milk together in the same passage? Yes, we can. Okay, so this is Odes of Solomon, chapter 4, or Ode number 4. Distill thy dews upon us, and open thy rich fountain, that pour forth to us milk and honey. For there is no repentance with thee, that thou shouldest repent of anything that thou hast promised. So Yahuwah keeps all his promises. And the end was revealed before thee. For what thou gavest freely, so that thou mayest not draw them back and take them again. For all was revealed before thee as Elohim, and ordered from the beginning before thee. And thou, O Elohim, hast made all things. Hallelujah. So here we see milk and honey and the dew in the same passage that are given to the righteous. The land of milk and honey was never meant to be something physical. Well, not merely physical, I should say. The land of milk and honey was the land of the living, the new earth. That is the inheritance of the faithful. Paradise, the land flowing with milk and honey, can only be inherited by those in a redeemed state and resurrected bodies. There is a very good reason that honey came forth from the rock that followed Israel in the wilderness. Maybe one day I will do a full study on that. From what I can tell, honey again is related to the resurrection. That is why the manna tasted like honey as well. In conclusion, the dew of heaven offers a profound insight into the nature of resurrection, complete healing, divine restoration. Just as the morning dew revives the earth and nurtures life, the dew of heaven will one day bring life to the dead, raising the righteous to new eternal existence. The promise of resurrection is woven throughout the scriptures, and imagery of dew as a divine gift encapsulates Yahuwah's grace and power to restore life. It serves as a powerful reminder that while death may claim our bodies, it is through the resurrection, empowered by the dew of heaven, that we are transformed and made whole again. The spiritual rebirth, foreshadowed through many ancient texts, not only offer hope for the future, but also calls us to live in the light of Yahuwah's favor and promise today, knowing that he will renew and revive all who are faithful to him. The dew of heaven, then, is not just a symbol of God's blessing, but a living promise that one day, through his grace, we will rise again. May Yahuwah give you the dew of heaven. That is the promise to all Israel.
Good job. Yeah, I have a question for you, because I'm still thinking
Sure.
about the when you talk about time travel with everybody being resurrected at the same time, which is a very fascinating thought. So, but then my mind was kind of going with that, and I'm just curious. I'm just asking you a question, and to get your response is: do you think, in terms of if there's connection? Okay, so if we have a linear material world, right? Now, when we talk about time itself, people are going to have their different ideas on it, and whether it's circular, linear, if that's even the best way expressed. But this idea that the spiritual world is perhaps outside of time, right? So I can work outside of time at different points in history,
Mm-hmm.
and if we're at different reset events and there's different resurrection accounts. And we don't need to go into all that now. And I've shown that in the past, where you do see different resurrection time, timestamps. Do we all go into the millennial kingdom? I'm telling you now. I'm telling you now that that would be a dream come true for me. Not just because of the millennial kingdom, because of course my theory is, that it's the Middle Ages, right? That the early and the late Middle Ages, which. For whatever reason, I was always fascinated with my entire life. And I have told people since the time I was probably a young 20-something-year-old man that if I could choose anywhere to go on vacation, it would be the Byzantine Empire. And they would just look at me like, what are you talking about? So if I could get transported in the resurrection back to the Byzantine Empire, I would be a pretty happy guy. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I firstly think there's not a lot of people that will say that, but I agree. It was probably one of the coolest ages to be alive. I love the Byzantine artwork as well. And I think it depicts a lot of things that we can see are correlated with the millennial kingdom. But pertaining to your question, Noel, it's possible. It's a possibility. I think the words of the gospel says that Yeshua's kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. And whether you are pro millennial kingdom happened already or not, that does not take away from his kingdom being a everlasting kingdom. And the possibility of going and experiencing the millennial kingdom, even though it's in our past, I would say anything is possible with him. So I would not write it off. Yeah, obviously it's difficult to answer that question. Like, yeah, we are speculating here, but I would not write it off as a possibility.
Well, yeah, no,
Because
I am speculating, and you did okay. So your presentation was great because you and I think alike in a lot of ways because you come from the same school of thought. I like how you take all these different passages and you just line them up and say, look, they're all saying the same thing, right? That's what I try to do. It's what you did. What you didn't do here is just take one passage and say, this is what I think it means, and you just go off on this tangent, right? Because you see that all the time. But you took, like, I don't know, what was there, 30 passages? I mean, there was a lot of different sources that are all saying the same thing. And I think it's as far as I'm concerned, it's a sealed case on the dew of heaven. That was really good. I want to talk a little bit more about because you covered the honey and the milk at the end. Would you like to elaborate more on that? I think
it's so interesting. When it comes to, like, a lot of times we see that Israel is promised the land of milk and honey. And obviously in our train of thought, we are taught that the land of milk and honey is Canaan, and that is a physical place where you will need to go. But it's so interesting when they enter into Canaan, the dew of heaven or the manna actually stops. Like, when you enter into Canaan, you need to start working the land, right? Those are the instructions. You need to plant, you need to sow and reap. Those are the instructions of the land of Canaan. And I think the promise of, and it can be both, to be fair, but I'm leaning more towards thinking that the land of milk and honey could be paradise, rather, referring to paradise.
Yeah.
And that was always the promise of Israel, because that was actually Jacob's blessing. Jacob's blessing was that he will be near to the dew of heaven, which I think is actually the land of milk and honey, that's connected to the dew of heaven.
Now you have another paper that hopefully maybe next time you come on you'll cover it, and it deals with pre-existence, correct?
Oh yes.
I don't want to assume. So I mean, I read it. I just wanted to make sure that we're clear and I understood you. Because I want to talk a little bit about the milk while I have you on, and I find it fascinating that, of course, we have the Milky Way. You might have heard me talk about this recently, and how some of the Platonists, there is no source that I can directly attribute to Plato, though he does have a lot of missing books, as do they all. And so it's kind of assumed that maybe Plato believed this because some of his students did, that the Milky Way is what would we call the transmigration of souls. It's like the sea of souls up there, that you're literally looking, we're in a womb and you're literally seeing these souls up there in this milky bed. And the first thing that happens when a baby is born is you put them up to the breast and they drink milk. But not only that, is that many of the ancients all throughout history, even before that, when the baby comes out, they'll take honey and they'll put honey on the lips of the child. Excuse me.
Wow.
So
yeah.
It's kind of interesting, this idea that this ancient idea that honey is divine. It's ultimately divine. In fact, bees were seen by the Egyptians and other cultures around the Mediterranean to be able to transcend, I think, the spiritual realm, that there was something very divine with the honey. So I just want to kind of point that out, that this idea of our ultimate destination, where we want to go, the land of milk and honey, the true land of milk and honey, as you said, that obviously I think most people understand that, reading Hebrews, that Abraham was looking for, the true land, right? He was looking for the true city. But it is interesting that the very place we all aspire to be is what babies are first fed when they come out of the womb. And of course, now doctors are stating that, which is just bogus, that you're not supposed to. I'm not a doctor. Okay. I'm just putting this out there, everyone. It is my opinion, and I'm not giving you medical advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. But I think it is bogus that you cannot give honey to a baby when all of history did it, but now doctors have decided that you're not supposed to do that. But again, that comment was just for entertainment purposes. Any thoughts on that?
Why did they give the babies honey? Do you know? What was the reason for that? Do you know?
Oh, for not or for giving honey?
So for giving them, yeah.
Well, honey is basically divine food. It's been since earliest times, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Greek. They saw honey as divine, right? So it was. Some of the ancients also commented upon the fact that babies require milk when they're born because they were embodying a milky sea. They were the Sea of Souls is attributed to milk. So that's what I was trying to point out, that there appears to be a connection between pre-existence, where souls have come from, and where we desire to return. So that was my.
That's a great connection. I've never thought of it that way, but it makes sense. It makes 100% sense for me. It's something that I think the occult is actually stolen from the Christian understanding. Like, if you were to go to a Masonic lodge, you would find like a chair there. And if you're like a very low-ranked Freemason, they would just tell you that's a chair. But as you move up, they actually use allegory, and later on it's not a chair, it's a special chair. And if you move even further up, it's actually a throne. And it's almost that idea of whatever we are seeing on earth, if there's a table or if there's a chair or if there's honey or milk, there is a heavenly equivalent of whatever we see in this realm that is up there and that we can experience in the heavenly realm. And I think I don't want to say as above, so below, but rather as it is in heaven, on earth as it is in heaven. Father is showing us things and teaching us things from the heavenly realm with physical things that we can touch and taste and hear, like the birds, like we just read about the birds, but it's actually talking about people that are singing to the Most High. But the birds are just an amazing way to understand, okay, but this will be like people singing to the Most High. And Father needs to teach us with tangible things. Like Yeshua said, if you don't understand the earthly things, how will I teach you about heavenly things? So it's for us to grasp those elementary things with the things we can engage with to understand the deeper things of the heavenly kingdom.
Yeah. I will say this, that's right now, and I invite everybody to. I started up the TUC book reading club, which we do on Tuesday nights, and I do it privately on Discord. We record it there. You can come listen live, and then I upload the videos to Patreon afterwards. And right now we're reading through Witness of the Stars by E.W. Bullinger. Bullinger was a 19th century flat earthist, and his writings is just phenomenal, where he's going through the zodiac and he's going through each of the constellations and showing how they all give witness to Messiah and the plan of salvation. But the one thing I really appreciate about him, and the reason I'm bringing this up, is because he shows how in the world, in the world, you kind of have two dominant worldviews that are very divided. One is what I kind of call more of like one is where everything is pagan. It's almost like if everyone's seen the Lego movie and he sings the song, everything is awesome. And other people just go around singing everything is pagan. Like everything is, you just have to point out everything is pagan and evil and icky and just get out of it. Right. Well, his is a very different approach. And he's saying, okay, but but the truth is the truth. And the fact is that all these different occult religions, they took the truth and they perverted it. But you can just because. So a great example is the crux, the constellation of the cross in the sky that he talks about, which is of course the Tav. And the Tav we see all over the world. It's a symbol of St. George. The Crusaders had it. It's all over the place. And one of the things that really wowed me, and what he's saying is that he's saying the original mankind, the Sethite religion, came down from the ark and Noah's 3 sons. They understood what the Tav was, and they understood. They looked up in the constellation, they saw the cross, and it was a part of all. You see it disseminated into all these world religions. By the time you get to the Romans, it became the symbol of death. And so this day, when we see crosses, it's like a symbol of death. And so many people in our community are like, have nothing to do with the cross. It's pagan, it's death. And he's like, no. That's the Roman point of view. It actually means life. It's a symbol of life. And on the cross, we get new life, right? On the Tav, I should say. And so when we're looking at a lot of these things, when we look at all these different cultures, that someone will say to me like, no, like, the mystery religions in Greece, the Eleusinian mysteries, they dealt with honey as divine. It's like, well, okay, but so does the Bible, right? The Bible talks about, so you see what I'm saying? Like, it's we believe that the Bible is true. We believe that we believe Yahuwah's testimony is true. We can trust his word. We can understand, that these mysteries were obviously disseminated and perverted in different. Anyways, I'm talking on and on there, but hopefully that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. But I think we can actually also do a lot of damage by the way we are making everything pagan or everything bad. Like even I saw a video today about somebody that takes all of the initials of the superheroes, like Peter Parker, and then it's PP, and if you turn the P's a certain way, or it's 2 6s, and that is related to Freemasons. And to me, like, it's like, okay, I understand, but even if you write something, if you're busy writing a fiction or a novel now, it's so difficult to not have any type of link that you can make to something that's part of the occult or something that is evil. And I think when we are trying to find something like bad, I think you're actually pushing away people from finding the real truth. When we are like into the minute things, but we don't have like a substantial amount of evidence to prove something and say, okay, but this is evil because we can have 5 or 6 witnesses telling us this is why it's evil. Instead of like squeezing out something evil out of it because we feel we want to make it pagan. Because a lot of the things, yes, what we've been taught is pagan, actually come back to the Bible in many ways.
So
like I was even thinking of, sorry, go ahead.
No, please finish your thought.
No, I was thinking of, while you were talking about the Milky Way, I was thinking of Lion King. You know that part where Simba's looking into the sky, the night sky, and
billions of miles away.
Yeah, and then it's like now his ancestors are there, right? So you're seeing Mufasa in the cloud and whatever. But now I'm thinking the Bible. Now a lot of people would say, yes, that's super pagan. These people in the sky and this what they call the star people or whatever. But actually, if you read Daniel 12, it says the righteous will be like the stars in heaven. So a lot of things we are always pushing the pagan, prompt. This is pagan, that is pagan. But I think we need to get to know our Bibles a lot better before pushing that prompt all the time.
I was going to make one comment. You had mentioned how I'm busy writing a book, which I technically finished it. I handed it in to my editor like a month ago. And I went and get it back, and then I probably have another week worth of work. But you're talking about excuse me. You were talking about how people are going to like dig in there and find things, and they will. And I knew that going into this. So I decided I'm just going to start shoving things in there, like he walks into room 33 and people are like, what? Like I just purposely like put things in there because I know people are going to be looking for it. So I'm like, well, I'm going to make these Easter eggs easy for you to find. He went into room 33. What are you going to do about it?
That's funny.
Yeah. All right. So this was a great discussion. And was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, not really. No, just thanks for having me, and thanks for the privilege of being part of the community. I think that's such a blessing to me to be part of the TUC community and contribute in my own unique way. And just having fellowship with like-minded people, it's such a blessing.
There was we're going to have you on soon to talk about the pre-existence and sons of Elohim. It's a fascinating subject. But there was the other one you wrote last year, and we never did anything with it. It was actually I published it in my website. It crashed like 3 or 4 times, and and I think for whatever reason it never came back up. I need to get back up. But the ball and the claw, it was a really fascinating little component of Millennial Kingdom theory that I wanted to. We need to do that, even if it's like a 20-minute video or something like that. We need to kind of talk about that. So,
Cool.
I'm putting this on your plate because I know you're a busy guy. You provide for a family, and I'm having you mark this on your very busy calendar. But no, thank you for taking the time to do this, and I'm happy to work around your schedule. Of course, you're like 9 hours ahead or something like that. You're 8.
I think more or less 8 hours. So
yeah, whatever. You're way far ahead. You're way far ahead. You're on the other side of the motionless earth. So yeah, thanks for being here, and thank you everyone for coming by in the middle of the day. Of course, that's when we did it live in the middle of the day today, and we'll do this again. Good night, everyone. When I can get.
If you had the power to go back in time and choose to give into a ministry that would effectively change the way the world sees an idea, would you do it? I think the answer is yes. Well, you don't have to go back in time. What you can do is right now, you can click the link below and give to the Paleo-Hebrew translation effort. What is this? Well, Paleo-Hebrew is the ancient form of Hebrew. When you write Hebrew out, you build it. If I said H2O, you know that I mean water. That's what building a language is. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, they all have this idea, even Paleo Babylonian, the Paleo-Egyptian, the hieroglyphics, petroglyphs. They have this idea that when you put a certain group of pictures together, it means a word. That's what Paleo-Hebrew was. That's what Paleo-Hebrew is. Pamela Glasgow is changing the way that we view the scriptures. You can help. You can go ahead and click the link below and find out how you can change your life, your study of the Bible, your children's life, your children's children, and everybody the whole world, man, the whole world can benefit greatly from this. And you can have the power to help right now. All you got to do is click it and give. And it's good to give. What does the Bible say? James says, what is good religion? That I defile not myself with the world, then I give to the widows and the orphans. Well, we're working on number 1. Sorry, number 2. Well, both actually. We're working on not defiling ourselves. So hopefully you're working on that too. I'm working on that. But we can give to the widows, and the widows. She's right there, and she's doing a work for you, for us, for the whole world, and we have the power to effectively change the paradigm of how we've seen the scriptures from time immemorial to tomorrow. So do that. All right, be blessed and not stressed.